Thank you very much. All right, very glad to be thank you very much, great. To be the one that is going to be closing this night today. I was very, very happy to see the talk of Manon yesterday. Surprised at the same time because I think that the idea behind it is quite the same. And I'm going to try to extend a bit further on that today and go into more specific topics, the methodologies that we're using. And the reason why we are just talking about this today in the design is because the way I see it, and I mean, we're talking about this phase at Brulance, we're calling it the design phase. We call it the design phase because we believe it's very close to what Steve Jobs was thinking when he was thinking about design, which is the purpose behind the things that we are designing, the reason why things exist in the first place, and not just the way it looks like. And so I'm going to try to give you a bit of a hint of what we do to make sure that we build stuff that have a purpose. So the talk is about how to not ruin your no-code project or your project as a whole, and I wanted to talk to you a bit about, as far as I remember, I've always been doing projects, you know. The first one I ever did actually, was to make the first prom of my school when I was 17. The school never had budget to do a prom, and we started thinking about how we could actually build one and make one with our friends. So we started selling pancakes at the time to be able to fund this whole project, and we managed to do it. We had the first prom in 50 years of the school at one of the most luxurious places in Brussels, at the Métropole Hotel in De Broekère, which was a fantastic experience. And from this very first time, I thought, damn, you might just build stuff from nothing by giving yourself the resources you don't already have, which I thought was amazing. And that's what all entrepreneurs and the companies that we're accompanying every day are trying to do, and that we're trying to boost with the products and the tools that we're putting into place. So in this kind of early career experience, I've always been working and studying at the same time. By the time I finished my studies, I already worked in 3 different corporations. I was always trying to sneak in as a student to be able to work and get paid at the same time. In Belgium, internships are not paid, so I was not liking this. I also launched the TED Talks in Brussels while I was in my studies. So I've been doing that for 3 years. It was an amazing experience. I loved it. And what I realized by being in these big corporations or the projects that I was trying to pull is that people just don't understand what they're trying to achieve, right? You have work. You have people that work every day for stuff and they don't know what is the big purpose of why they are working every day. It's kind of struck me, and I was like, okay, how can we change this idea of always thinking in terms of tasks, projects, and more looking forward to the things that we're doing that make sense and that change the whole purpose of the organization we're part of. So during my whole studies, I finished my master's, and I realized that after 5 years, I was hearing at the time about the GAFAM all the time. Data, and I had no clue what data was actually about. For me, it was this kind of big AI, cyber stuff that is kind of inaccessible. So what I thought at the end of this university degree is, all right, I'm going to be joining a tech company, and I'm going to apply as a tech builder for a Salesforce integrator. So that's what I have been doing for quite some time. That demystified completely my understanding of how data was working and what a digital product was working at the time. It was very interesting. I mean, working in such companies is basically understanding how multi-million euros digital projects work and what are the methodologies to be able to deliver on this. So it's been a couple of years where I've been working with multinational companies all around the world, seeing how we were bringing a project from beginning till the end, which is actually quite an interesting experience, even for Salesforce integrators, because to be fair, sometimes you have projects that last way longer than the time you are in the company. So you may have projects that go on for like 3-4 years. People get started in a company and never see the end of the project. It's insane. So extensive roadmap, and at one point I just gave up. I was lucky enough to look at all the parts of the projects, but I had a side project on the side with some friends. We were lucky enough to raise some money, so we had fundings to launch this idea So I quit that consultancy to get started and launched my own startup. Yay, amazing. The startup, the whole experience. But building digital products with limited resources is way different from what you are doing when you have millions in the bank and you're able to have big teams at Salesforce, right? So the Salesforce design experience for me was a blessing in the first hand because I was so good at just like thinking about what is the actual products, questioning myself and the people about what we want to build. But on the other hand, when it came to building it, we were fucked. I spent literally weeks trying to figure out how we were going to do that with the 200Ks that we had in the pocket. It was just impossible. And that's when I had, one more time, this kind of LinkedIn guru that came out of nowhere and was talking about this crazy thing that was called no code. Whoa, amazing. So by the next week I saw that, I started working with him. I called him, I was like, let's build that together. And that's what we did. It was very impressive. I mean, from the very first moments, we were able to go into the development so fast. The tools that we were using at the time was Airtable, Stacker, some Zapier. I was amazed to be able to see that you can just like start a portal with a backend, and that's insane, right? It's like it's changing the whole game. I used to do that for companies for millions, and we're doing that for just a couple €1,000. It was cheap, it was fast, but on the other side, for me, it was very impressive because it was a very unstructured approach. The way I was looking at it was like, okay, it's just a genius guy playing with Legos, and I just don't understand how it's working yet, but it works. It's very interesting. So at one point, we kept on working for a couple weeks. I understood how it was working. You're coming from Salesforce. You've seen big databases, so like, I got it. I was like, okay, I'm able to do that myself, and I kept on going on that project. But this startup failed, like most of the startups that we're trying to launch. Unfortunately, we're not able to have the traction we wanted, and we didn't manage to get the second round of funding. So this is the moment I started thinking, what am I going to do with my life? And I remembered, so I stayed friend with this person that helped me in the first place. I was like, well, this startup is working great too. They're an agency. They probably lack a bit of structure. Can I help in any way? Go there and take the best of what they're doing with their digital tools, and I will be bringing the methodologies that I have been learning for years at Salesforce. And so that's what we did. For 2 years, we applied these multi-million euros methodologies that, of course, we shortened, we simplified for the kind of projects that we had, and we were able to change drastically the way the business was actually working. From this 4,000 average basket, we moved to this 50,000 average basket. Clients were happy, we were delivering on time. Yes, great. So we did our time, and then I just started from fresh. I wanted to do something similar in terms of the methodologies that we had with a different team on a different models, and that's how we got started at Relance. Today, I'm basically applying what I've been learning from Salesforce, what we have been implementing in the no-code space, and we started to do more than 4 years ago, and that's what allowed us in less than a year now to sign and start delivering on more than 500K projects. So that's what we're doing right now, and I'm glad because we're on the right track. So what I'm going to do with you right now is, if it wants to go to the next slide, is to help you guys get up to speed, because I think that it's, I mean, again, what you have been talking about yesterday really gave me a big hope, and the more I'm hearing about the people that come and talk on stage, the more I'm like, dang, okay, it changed from 4 years ago. The thing is way more professional today. I love it. I think there's still some room for improvement. That's what I'm going to try to share with you right now. So, it's going to be about the mindset, the methodologies, and the deliverable that we are giving during this design phase from A to Z. Okay, so it might be very simple as such, when we're talking about like identifying the problem, but I think that's where everything starts. We get clients that come and say, hey, I have this thing that doesn't work. All right, but this is the symptom. This is not the real problem. Let's try to figure out what is the real problem and how we can solve this, okay? Thankfully, most companies actually work the same way. It's pretty simple. It's just a couple guys that had a vision. They want to solve some problems. They have a solution for this. The solution is making some money. It's costing some money as well. And if the company is making more money than it costs money, technically the company is working. Great, good job. This is what we call a business model. I'm not going to go into the whole business model theory, right? But for those of you who have been entrepreneurs or that have been studying this innovation stuff, you might remember this big board, you know, where on the right side you have everything that is linked to the customer, bringing money, everything on the left side that is linked to the partners, the resources that you have inside, that is costing money, and basically one is supposed to bring the value to the other, and in the center we have the value that the company is supposed to bring, right? So that's what a business model is about, a value to customers with people that work in order to make this value real. What we are doing here is basically boosting operations. When you're boosting operations, you are focusing mainly on what's happening on the left side. It is understanding how you can optimize the most you can the resources that allow to bring the value in the end to the customers. So for that, I have been building for the past years a model that I call the functional mapping. And it's pretty simple as such, but that's something that I'm using from the very first call with my clients that help me map out the type of project that we're going to have and the return on investment that we can already start to promise to the people to make sure that we're going to get started on a project that just makes sense. This functional mapping is pretty easy. It's also divided in just 3 big things. You have a part I'm going to show it to you afterwards. I hope it's going to be big enough. You have basically a whole part about the people that are taking care of prospecting, acquiring, retaining clients, you know, money coming in as well. We're talking about the sales, marketing, customer support. Then you have all the parts that are linked to the people that manage the resources we need in the company to make sure that, you know, everything's rolling and that we can deliver the promised experience to the clients. We're talking about HR, we're talking about the people that are in charge of production, project managers, all these people that work all day to make sure that the value is delivered. And then, of course, there's all the systems, channels that help people to function effectively. So hopefully, yeah, as I thought, it's pretty small. I'm going to try to help you visualize that. If you want to close your eyes, I can just like look at the screen, it's fine. So that's the part I was talking about with like the marketing, the sales, the service, so customer support, basically. All the resource planning here, human resources, finance, account. Oh, nice, perfect. Dang, you're a magician, bro. Nice. Okay. So basically all the parts that are the work force, the people in the company that are working and supporting the vision, all the people selling it, and then we have other bricks like, you know, the backups, all the channels to talk internally, externally, portals. This thing is supposed to represent 99.9% of the company out there. The moment you have a prospect or a client that comes in, you can look at this board, and the moment he starts talking about a problem, it's very easy to just say, all right, now you're talking about something in marketing. By the way, the more a company is small, the more you have one person that is just changing hats and doing most of these tasks. The more the company is big, the more you have different people that are taking care of each block. So in each block, we have specific functions. That's why we call it the functional mapping with the business units and the people that work in these business units. Because in the end, it's people working. And that's what we need to understand. Tools are great, processes are great. Behind the tools and the process, or in front of the tools and the process, it's people that are trying to do a job to make sure that the company is making more money than it loses and that it achieves a purpose for a client. That's the whole point, right? So the moment you have a prospect in front of you, I want you to think about this mapping. What business units are we thinking about? What is the specific activity we're thinking about? And behind each of these activities, we have processes and we have people working with each other. That's very interesting. I'm going to, what? Nice. So, the whole approach for Brulance is to very quickly, from the very first call, trying to go into an ROI estimations. It is hard to do, but I used to have a teacher at university that said it's better to be approximately right than precisely wrong. It already gives a good idea from the beginning whether or not you want to go into this kind of projects, and it will help you to sell the first phase, which is this design phase that we're all scared to sell in the beginning because we think that nobody will buy it. We want to get started right away on the building, and that's where it fucks up. So what we're going to do is to identify this key issue, looking at this functional mapping, right? Then we're going to try to quantify the impact. We're talking about this work, this work, this work, how many people are working there, how long are they working, what are the specific processes, how much time is it taking. Those are the questions that you want to ask right away when you're meeting with a client, right? And then you want to make sure that everything is aligned with the goals. So you might have someone in front of you, especially if you're talking to someone from a bigger corporation, that is talking about the issue they have in their company. But in the end, how is it serving the whole purpose? How is these problem impacting the whole story? And that's where we need, as consultants, as no-code makers, as people that are trying to solve their issue, to take a step back and think, okay, how is this problematic, right? What is cool is that you can quite easily start doing these kind of calculations. And I'm going to give you an idea. This is what we call an opportunity cost. That's how much it will cost you basically to not implement something today if you just like keep working the same way. And so that's a real case from a couple of weeks ago. You will have someone that is calling you and telling you, hey, I have 5 people right now that are basically drafting invoices every day because we have data that is coming in from sales. We don't have an integration. They need to put all the invoice in there. It's 5 people full-time, and I'm paying them roughly 2,500K per month. I put a link somewhere to the calculator. I will send it afterwards. It's basically perpetuity. For those of you who remember their finance courses, it is these 5 salaries today projected over an infinity of time. Technically, the company is supposed to keep going. And this amount is 150K. This only is a 150K project. Doesn't mean you have to sell it that way. Doesn't mean that you have to go that much. But this is what you want to explain to your client. Right now, you are sitting on 150K, and it's probably bigger than this. These 5 people, you have plenty of projects that you told me about, other problems there. They could work there. We could free up this time. This is the envelope you're sitting on. This helps going further and selling this first phase that you want to do. So don't sell a project right away, sell a design phase. This is during the first call, and during this design phase, you will have the time to say, all right, we're going to sit down together and we're going to co-construct a product together. We're going to take this time. I don't remember the name of the person that was speaking before me, sorry. Alexander was saying that is, take the time. All right, how do you take this time? I remember when we got started, it was horrible. You're like, you want to sell that to a client, they don't understand. You're just like, I understand my problem, just like, let's go, we can build. No, you don't. So you're sitting on 150K, don't spare 5K or something today to build something that is not going to make sense in the future. We want something that keeps going. We're going to co-construct that together. Let's first start with this design phase. Collaborative approach, we're going to, as my dear colleagues have been already talking about this, sit with the last user, understand how they're working. And in the end, I'm also sharing with you a little bit how I price this, usually. Looking at the functional mapping, based on how many blocks will be highlighted during your first discussion, you're able to start thinking about the number of workshops that you will need. If you see 3 little blocks in marketing, 4 in sales, you already know that you have kind of 7 workshops that might be going on. I will be thinking about 1 hour per workshop, and what I will be doing is to add for each workshop 3 hours of restitution afterwards. In average, to give you an idea, with Brulance, we have design phase that lasts approximately 20 hours. It starts around 10, and it can go up to 50, sometimes a bit more, depending on the size of the project when you go with very big corporation with a lot of clients. So now I'm going to go a bit more into the deliverables that we are providing to the clients at the end of this specific phase. We have 5 of them. We have this user story backlog that probably some of you are already acquainted with. We have the user flows. We have the tool architecture. We have the implementation roadmap, and then we have this CapEx, OpEx estimation. For those of you that don't know it, CapEx is basically the amount of money that one of your clients needs to put for you to start building. And the OpEx is the money that they will keep paying throughout time to maintain the solution or to pay for the licenses. I see Stan that is giving me 5, which means, okay, I'm going to try to speed it up then. So now I'm going back into the different deliverables. The first one is the user story backlog. For those of you who are not familiar with this, it's pretty simple. It is a list of needs that you will be capturing throughout your workshops, where basically, if you organize your workshop properly, you will always have a certain type of persona doing a specific work in front of you. You want to always structure it as such. As persona, I want or I would like a feature in order to the business needs that they really want to solve in the end. In the beginning, you don't really care too much about whether it's priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. You just want to make sure that you capture everything. You're going to keep that in one repository. It's going to be your backbone for the project, making sure that afterwards you will never miss anything. And that saves you as well, because requirements keep going. It's one way to make sure that you stick to what was said or adapt, but in a smart way. I will come back to that afterwards if I have time. You can link these user stories to many things. So here I'm sharing with you a screenshot of a backlog that we have in Notion. We have hundreds of them. It's always the same thing. I will link a user story to one of the functional block that I showed you earlier, right? The functional mapping, we have a functional block. This user story is linked to this department from this functional block. I will have the persona, I will have the wish, and I will have the reason why they're wishing this thing. And then afterwards, we'll be able to quantify all that to move on with the project. The user flow creation, I guess that I'm not going to go too much in details for this one because you've seen it yesterday, you've seen it before. This is the idea of thinking, I have a set of user stories. The problem with these user stories is that they're an exhaustive list. They are not a story as such. We want to be able to see right away who is doing what, at what moment, and see how these actions are linked to each other. This is where you have this process mapping with personas, and then these different personas, the action they're doing, how these actions are triggering other actions as human, and then thinking about the systems that will be supporting it and making these story faster, more efficient, and useful for the company. The tool architecture, it's a bit the same idea. It's thinking, okay, I will be trying to cover as many as your user story as possible, the most important ones, with the minimum amount of tool. We don't want to build like a big factory that nobody is able to maintain. So the minimum amount of tool for the maximum of user stories that we are covering. And once again, this is something that we represent on the functional mapping that I showed you earlier, where every single tool is next to people that are using it. At the end, it's very important. It's people that are behind all these things. And the implementation roadmap. So if you've done your work great, you have your user stories that you have been regrouping into what we call epics. It's not very important. If you have your user stories, you know what are the most important, how you regroup them. If you have your user flows, if you have your tool architecture, well, congrats. It means you already have a big idea of what you're going to be building, why, and what is the overall return on investment that you want to get. That's what you're selling to your clients. And that's the reason why they paid you in the first place. I can tell you it's already way easier to sell these big projects while you have been working hand in hand and co-constructing this thing. It's really changing the sales process as well. The last thing is the CapEx OpEx estimation. So because you have been spending so much time with all these people in workshops, great, you have been able to validate all your hypotheses. You have been sitting down with these people and you know exactly how much time they spend doing what. This allows you then to have a real idea of how much you could gain with your own project. If your project is more expensive than what you have seen, don't do it. It doesn't make sense. Nobody wants to be the owner of a project that is not changing the life of the companies we're working with. Fortunately enough, if your ROI big estimation from the beginning was not too far from reality, there's room to work together, and no-code tools are really helping to get all this methodology up to pace, faster, and that's where we come into place and the real magic starts to happen. Yeah, congrats. If you have been doing all that, today you're able to get started on the build without any problem. You know where you're going, you know that you're going to have a positive business case, and your client should be happy in the end with the no-code makers that you are and the skills that you'll be able to put into practice. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip that. So if you want to learn more about this, I'm not posting often on LinkedIn, but when I do, I try to be as concise and enriching as possible. I will also have a workshop tomorrow with one of the clients that is coming from Belgium, where we want to make this exercise into practice. We had an amazing ROI with their project. The ideas will be to put you in front of him and try to do the exercise that we have been doing more than 2 years ago to see where you would land. Thank you very much for your time, and I will take some questions.
Thank you very much.